When we saw you at the joint, it was very telling for anybody who's into the live sound thing, because Neil's a great engineer, REO's a great band.
Absolutely.
And
good friend of mine, Neil.
Yeah.
And Neil always tunes the system. That's not one of my strengths, but it sure is his. He really knows the ins and outs of all the system. He's great.
Yeah, he is really good. And by the way, public apologies to Neil that it took us 9 months to get the video edited. It's literally gonna go up at the same time. You guys at the same time.
Again, I look up to Neil for many reasons, and he is a great systems tech. He is truly good at that. And
the thing that was interesting is the sound, the difference in the quality, not quality as in good or bad, but the tonality, the overall quality, I guess, of the sound was so different between the two of you. You got two classic rock bands with guys who all play. You've got the same system, the same room, the same night.
And similar types of groups. They're both pop, rock, you know.
But they sounded completely different.
Yes, they did.
Completely different. And it was really kind of interesting. And by the way, Neil pointed out to me, he goes, listen, he goes, you'll hear a difference. And me and Gary are very different.
Yeah, we are.
And you'll hear it. And I don't think I have ever been in a room and heard that big a difference. And it's all just the engineer's approach.
Sure.
You know?
Well, I go about it like I'm making a record, but instead of mixing as a collage, I'm mixing as a caricature. So you're still hearing that general, like it's a record, but I'm poking at people. I'm just kind of poking that solo a little bit more. I'm making sure you're hearing those vocals, because that's what you remember.
Right.
You don't remember just the band. You remember certain aspects. I think there's a point to every song, and I try and make sure that I capture that point of every song, so that people say, oh, I remember that, before they hear anything, you know.
And if you're a young guy coming up, it may be one of the most important things you'll ever hear. And it's, you know, knowing the material and knowing that
I got
this
an
is the
edge
part
there.
Well, yeah, we're a little older, it helps.
But I'll tell you this. One other thing I learned while I was out here for long periods of time, you get into habits where you'll think that the record had more of this or more of that added. I have to go back
and
all the time. And I'll tell you who keeps me straight on this, Lawrence. I give him a show disc about once a month, just to make sure, because he's the guy who listens to everything. He doesn't just say, hey, my keyboards are wrong here.
Right.
He'll listen to the overall sound, and he'll say, Gary, you know, somehow I think that maybe that the third in the chord on you know, the way that we sing this chorus is just a little bit lower. Go listen to the original. Because he came in knowing that he had to represent Dennis's parts.
Right.
You know,
yeah, that was a tough gig to fill.
And it's a very difficult thing. As much as he puts his own personality into what he's doing, he does have to stay true to the
Absolutely.
music. So he must listen all the time to make sure he's not veering off too much of the approach of how Dennis sang songs.
Right.
Not that he has to mimic,
right,
but he has to get the essence.
You have to get the
of
same
song.
essence, the same spirit. Yeah.
So basically, I do the same thing with my mixing. I go back every month and I'll listen to certain songs. We've recently started playing a lot of B-sides from the earlier records.
Okay.
Like Man in the Wilderness, I'm Okay, those kind of things.
Great songs.
I haven't listened to those in 20 years.
Right.
So I went about it as I remembered it first.
Right.
And before we did our Pieces of Eight, the Grand Illusion tour, I took home some recordings of what our rehearsals were like, and I started listening to the records. I said, oh my God, I didn't do that. I didn't do this. And I had to rethink it. So now even the Come Sail Aways and things like that, I go back and listen. And I say, okay, there was more of this here, this there, and I try and recreate that. I have a studio in Chicago called Pumpkin, and every now and then I get tribute bands in. Okay. The Beatles tribute band. I don't remember which one. American English it was called. Okay, very popular band, and they did a teaser tape of 10 quick things, you know, to put out for work. And they came in and they did the 10 things that I asked them to do, because I figured these were good, strong songs.
Right.
And then they left me and said, mix it. So Brainiac Gary, thinking he's doing something really good, I'm trying to make this sound really good. And then I listened to it and I said, that don't sound like the Beatles anymore. I had to go back and realize that Sometimes there was only a tambourine over here. Sometimes the piano was here and all the vocals were here.
Right.
And by God, if I didn't mix it like that, it sounded like it, right? It sounded like the Beatles. There's a way that you do remember things, and then your mind kind of distorts them after a while.
Right.
You know, I thought it was like this, but it wasn't. So after I remixed it, I didn't play the first thing
Right.
for them, thank God. You know, but then I remixed it and I compared them to the record. They came in and they were flabbergasted because they had never heard their music represented just like the Beatles. Yeah, so, you know, for young guys, if you're going to be mixing a band that's had anything out there, represent them like they want to be represented. That's the reason they put these recordings out, because they felt at the time that's what they sounded like. You must represent that band.